Hi folks, it's Rob Flux here from Property Developer Network, and I have my good mate Tony Meredith sitting with me. We're going to apologise in advance. We're actually sitting in a hotel foyer and it was completely calm and peaceful literally 2 seconds ago, and a busload of people has just turned up. So we thought this was the most beautiful, serene spot until literally 1 minute ago. So
stick with us, bear with us.
Bear with us.
It's going to unfold over the next half an hour of entertaining viewing, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So welcome to this week's Sunday session, and the topic for the week is the ups and downs of property development. I guess we've come from a very interesting segue. I guess Tony and I have just spent 4 whole days.
Where are we, mate, by the way?
We're in Sydney, I should say. So we've just spent 4 whole days at a Tony Robbins event. So as everybody would know, Tony and I run an event called the Psychology of Property Development, really trying to get people into, I guess, the mindset and the strategic direction in and around the property development space. Tony Robbins does it at a much more emotional level, and the ability to apply that in all parts of your life. So as with everyone else in life, we need to progress ourselves, and so that's what we've done for the last 4 days. A little bit of professional development from that way. We've still got our little armbands on.
We do.
It's the badge of honour.
Barely got our voices.
Barely got our voices. There has been so much dancing and yelling and clapping and power moves and a whole bunch of things. It's a very emotionally charged environment, and I think is quite topical with regards to this week's particular topic of the month, being the ups and downs of property development. So
we've got a few people joining us, Rob.
yeah, absolutely. There's a number of us on here. So I can see Alex, I can see Cameron, I can see Deb. I've got 8 listed here, but I can't see who they are. We've got Vanessa and a couple of others. So hello everybody, and welcome.
And Cameron was at the event with us. It was great to catch up with him.
Yeah.
So he would be all abuzz after 4 days of Tony Robbins.
There was actually quite a number of our Property Developer Network community there, which is refreshing to watch in a lot of ways, and it actually got me thinking, I guess with a little bit of a nudge from Tony, that our community is actually that large, and I always go on about us getting discounts because of the fact that we've got so many people. So I'm actually going to be approaching the Successful Resources and Tony Robbins crew during the week and trying to coordinate a massive discount and see if we can get somewhere in the vicinity of 100 odd people from the Property Developer Network community.
Yes.
I actually had, I think we probably bumped into about 7 or 8 people there from all parts of the country. So it was refreshing to see people doing that on their own reconnaissance. But if we can facilitate that, and if we can negotiate a massive discount on behalf of everyone, then I would actually love to.
When you do, not
so
if.
When. When. So the answer is that will be coming again. So whether or not you guys do or not is up to you.
Yes, we want you. We want you to come. It's an amazing event. So on that topic, so why would someone want to come along, Rob, who's in property developing?
It touches all areas of your life, and I guess one of the challenges that most of us face is that we have issues and challenges in our relationships, issues and challenges in and around our workspace, and we bring that baggage with us into the property development sphere. And when we bring that baggage with us, that takes the form of limiting beliefs, it takes the form of, stress and a whole bunch of other characteristics that inhibit us to, or limit us to actually perform our job well in that property development side of things. So,
So one of the keys that Tony Robbins talks about is getting into a beautiful state. And for those of you who are not familiar, Rob's going to get into a beautiful state right about now, clearly, drinking his Stellas. But it's all about when you're in a beautiful state, you're able to solve problems a lot easier. You get yourself into a state of flow. I don't know if people have heard of that before, but things come up in property development, as you know, things that you don't anticipate, things that you haven't prepared for, and being in a beautiful state enables you to be able to deal with those, to be able to respond as opposed to react, so that you can then go on and create solutions or develop solutions to keep progressing forward on your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see a couple of comments coming through. Alex is saying, yes, we look exhausted. We are. I have done so much dancing. my knees are shot. I am literally hobbling at the moment. So, and our voices are croaky, and I guess Cameron's saying fantastic idea to get the discount. Absolutely, and Jen says it's actually on her wish list. So, I'm going to say if you genuinely would like us to try and get that, what is going to be massively advantageous for us to negotiate a deal like this is for you guys to actually put some comments below to say yes, please get us, get us the discount. We'll come, lock it in, and then we can go and negotiate. Are we going in with 20 people, 50 people, 100 people? The more people I can say that are coming in, the more likely we're going to get a massive discount.
At least 100. At least 100.
So my goal is to try and get 100 people there from our Property Developer Network community. See if we can actually take over an entire section and have that reserved just for us. Yeah,
fantastic.
So sounds fantastic.
It is exciting.
So very quickly, logistics, I guess just for the next couple of weeks, we've got an event coming up in Sydney next weekend, which is our Property Developer Network monthly meetup there. And then on the 5th of October, we have our Melbourne-based meetup. And in this particular instance, Tony here is going to be running that event. Because it's my daughter's 18th birthday, and I'm going to be a responsible dad and watch her get rat-faced drunk, and make. Well, she won't. She's a very sensible child.
So if you're in Melbourne and you're familiar with AV or anything technical, then I'd love you to reach out to me because I've got the running of the meeting stuff down pat. It's more the technical stuff beforehand that is above my head.
All good. So as to the topic of the month, so the ups and downs of your property development journey. So the way we thought we'd do this is actually go through the different phases of the property development journey and some of the issues and challenges that you're likely to face on the way. So with that in mind, I guess the biggest ups and downs that I see people face right at the very start of their journey is the fact that they don't know where to start. They don't have a strategy in mind, and because of that, they suffer from bright shiny objectitis, and they start looking at everywhere and everything, and they see a lot of people doing very well with lots of different strategies, and so they spend a small amount of time on one strategy, and then they flip and flop and that sort of thing. I guess across multiples.
Of course, we've got strategy, absolutely, and you're zigging and zagging, and you're not able to progress forward, and then that leads into the suburb side as well, right? So, people flipping and flopping on suburbs and spending a lot of time on realestate.com or listening to someone saying, well, I've found a great deal in that suburb. Oh, that must be where all the opportunities are. And then the next person you talk to, they're on the other side of town, so then you're going over there and you're just constantly chasing your tail.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you know, I very much promote the fact that you want to lock in one strategy and lock that in very hard, very solid, and I guess that becomes your roadmap and your blueprint for how you actually move forward. And we deal with that, I guess, through that Psychology of Property Development 2-day event. And I guess the intention there is to go through all your money rules and say, well, what are what's your risk profile? How much money have you actually got right now? How much time until you need to get paid? Can you wait 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years? Those sorts of things. What your risk profile is, and a whole bunch of things. And I plug that into a little matrix, and out pops out 2 or 3 potential strategies that may fit your particular circumstances. And then based on that, then you will then have a leniency for one to the other based on your personality. Some people love picking up a brush and doing renovating, and other people hate it. So there's going to be some of those strategies that just start calling your name. So so I guess the very first thing from an ups and down point of view is lock in a strategy. And if you don't, what you're going to find is you're going to be spending a whole bunch of energy, burning a whole bunch of energy, running around everywhere, not really gaining any traction in any shape or form.
Correct.
I guess the next phase that you would actually then go to is, well, locking in a deal. And the problem with locking in a deal is, well, I don't know where to start looking. So the biggest challenge there is, well, where's my property hotspot, or what's the spot that I should be looking for? And people tend to, what I see is they tend to go from one council to the next council to the next council, and then they go from one suburb to the next suburb to the next suburb, and when they're doing that in combination with the fact that they've got multiple strategies, those two mean that they're trying to learn multiple sets of rules across multiple sets of councils, and the effort required to do that is very, very difficult. And so they get frustrated, and it's not about effort because they're putting the effort in, it's about the effectiveness of that effort. So I guess that from an up and down perspective, I would say if you can get laser focused and literally laser focused to say, well, I've got one strategy and I've got one council that I want to do it in, that means I've got one set of rules.
Correct, yeah. So you talk about inch wide, mile deep.
Absolutely. So so if you're looking at all the different strategies you got that way, and then you layer that on with all the different councils you're going to do, you've got all these different sets of rules. If you just tip that sideways, then you only got one set of rules, and you've got all that same amount of effort goes really, really deep in your knowledge, and you're going to get a lot more traction. So if you want to avoid a lot of frustration, I guess that one of the biggest challenges is frustration, and I guess the
Well, frustration because you're not getting traction.
correct.
And you're not getting traction because you're spreading yourself too thin. And so it's all about narrowing in your focus. And as Rob said, one strategy, one council, and then 3 suburbs.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I can see a couple of people making comments along the way, so I might just take the time to say hello.
Absolutely.
So I can see Jen's come on board. Cam's saying, put it on the must list, Jen. Absolutely, Cam, appreciate that. Jen says, I love the great idea, Cameron. A must list instead of a wish list.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. You should absolutely have a must list, Jen. And I guess Tony and I talk about that very much, about having a list of rewards. So what have you done that deserves that must list? So don't reward yourself early. Set yourself up to say, well, I'm going to take that thing on when I've achieved this particular outcome.
Sure, but also Tony Robbins, and again we've spent 4 days with the great man, he talks about you don't get your goals, you get your musts. So if you must do it, then you'll do it. So it looks like, based on that, Rob, that Jen has got a hand up, so she's coming to Unleash the Power Within in 2020. So there's one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cameron's another one.
Yeah, very good. Sean's jumped on and says, g'day, mate, how are you? And Adrian has just jumped on, so clearly you've made it home, mate. So Adrian was our chauffeur for the weekend. Picked us up from the airport, took us to Tony Robbins, spent the whole weekend with us, locked in the same hotel room, so quite fortunate.
A roommate with us,
and brought it home, so thank you, mate, appreciate that. I guess next phase in the property development journey where people are going to have trouble is, well, once they've locked in what their areas are and what their strategies are, they're going to struggle then with what particular suburbs should I be farming in, and where are the opportunities, and this is where starting with your strategy first starts to then help you out massively, because if you know what your strategy is, then it's quite easy to start to reverse engineer the suburb itself and look for evidence of success of previous people having done that before, not only physically having done it, but being able to reverse engineer their deals and say, well, would they actually do that profitably? Because there's lots of people who deals that are not profitable, I can assure you, and many of us see the fact that there's development signs going up and that sort of thing, and think that everyone else is making a killing, but when you actually do the numbers and reverse engineer their deals, quite often they're barely scraping by. So so I guess from an up and down perspective, I guess when you're starting to look at that, what we're really trying to do is how do we reverse engineer that suburb so that we can eliminate that up and down and actually get ourselves to a point where we've got some suburbs with a very high probability. Sorry, I'm losing words.
You're right.
High probability for success, and that eliminates a lot of that frustration layer out of the process.
Yeah, correct. And because this is where a lot of the time is spent, a lot of the downs are spent because it's very difficult to find a deal. It's challenging to find a deal. And so a lot of time is spent up front finding that right deal. And so the whole idea is to narrow your focus so that you can then be laser focused on what you're looking for. And when you're clear on what you're looking for, then you activate your RAS, your reticular activating system, and all of a sudden the potential to find it is increased because you're looking for something very specific, and you're now starting to see it in a whole lot more places than you were previously.
Very good. And for those who aren't aware what a RAS is, it's the filtering mechanism that sits in your subconscious brain that automates a lot of the decisions that you make on your behalf without you even realizing it. So where you've got limiting beliefs, where you've got, so if you've got the belief that you're not going to find deals, then what do you know? You won't find deals. If you don't know what your strategy is, then you don't actually see any of those opportunities sitting in front of you. Whereas if you've got a particular strategy locked in, then your res starts to kick in and it starts to see those opportunities everywhere you go. So it's like when you buy a brand new car and you just choose a particular make and a particular model, a particular colour, and then all of a sudden when you're driving on the road you see the exact same make, the exact same model, the exact same colour everywhere you go. So that is the RAS at work. So it filters everything on your behalf. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to train that RAS to be looking for things that are specific for what we're after. So when you've got that strategy in mind, then you're imprinting that into your subconscious to say, how do we find it?
Absolutely. Rob, have you ever had a live audience for this Sunday session? I know you've got your audience there, as in on the other side of the in the internet, but mate, we've got a live audience here.
So I'm just going to spin the camera around. We've got so many people sitting here, it's not funny. So we had a whoops.
I think you had your finger over that.
We had a busload of people turn up at the last minute, and clearly just around the corner from the airport. So some hosties have just turned up as well. So
correct.
So apologies for any background noise, folks.
Watching on with anticipation, Rob.
Absolutely. A number of potential property developers.
Let's see a few other questions have come through or comments.
A few other comments. So Sean's saying my kids are watching too. Trying to teach them early. Absolutely. Well done, mate. And hello, kiddies. Let's see if we can get the kiddies to actually come up with a question or two. Sean, that'd be fantastic. And Adrian says, what a life changer that the weekend has been. Absolutely.
So just on that, so what was one of your highlights of the weekend? Or did you have a particular breakthrough on the weekend?
So I had a couple of breakthroughs that were I guess rather private in nature, but I think so. Without going into the detail of that breakthrough, what I would say is that when we have those, hey kiddies, when Sean said hello. When you have a private issue that's happening outside of your life, you tend to bring that dark cloud into your property development journey. So it's very important that you actually deal with your life, I guess, in completeness and not just look at one aspect of your life. So it's very important that we look after all sides of our emotional well-being, our physical well-being, and our educational well-being, as well as our financial well-being.
Correct.
Yeah. Correct. And so I guess that in itself is an up and down in the journey, is the fact that there are things outside of property development that actually impact us. So that's probably a really good segue to that sort of thing. I can see Sean saying they put the stamps on the letter I send out each month. That's fantastic, mate.
That's awesome.
Let me segue just from that. Going back in time, there was one of the members of our community who used to pay $1. So kiddies, are you listening? $1 for every property that his kids would actually identify, and he had them actually doing like a 15-minute check on every single property in the entire suburb, and they would qualify the deal, and if he sanity checked that and anointed that, he would give them $1 for every single one, and then he'd give them another $1 if they wrote the letter out, put it in the envelope, sealed it, and put the stamp on it. So kiddies, opportunity to be entrepreneurial right now. So Sean, I'm sure you'll honour that commitment, mate.
So you may be costing Sean a fortune.
Mate, if he gets one deal out of it, he's paid for it. So kids, don't listen to him, all right? Yeah. So our next up and down in the process, assuming that we actually find a deal, we've proven it's developable, we've proven it's profitable, the next issue is, can we actually negotiate it? And boy, you're talking about ups and downs. That's an emotional roller coaster going into a negotiation and trying to be able to learn how to read the other side, understand the issues and challenges of the vendor and why they're selling. If you can actually understand their needs, understand what their values are, then you have a chance to actually offer a solution to solve the problem as to why they're selling in the first place. And there are an arsenal of tools that you've got in your toolkit with regards to how you acquire the property, and each one of those may solve a different problem off the vendor. So, there's upfront sales, there's delayed settlement sales, where you may be able to pay a little bit more. There's options contracts, there's joint ventures, there's, I guess, a myriad of different ways to actually acquire the property, and each one solves a different issue and challenge in the process. There's buy early and rent back, there's all sorts of things. So your job, if you're talking about the ups and downs, your job is to get to understand how to interact with people. You want to understand how to read personality profiles. You want to understand how to assess their values very quickly and get to their emotional and physical needs.
So for someone who's listening there, Rob, in regards to personality profiles and values, how do they do that? Like, how do they learn how to read someone's personality profile?
So it's practice. So and with all the stages in the property development journey, it is practice. And so you're not going to be able to practice your negotiation skills unless and until you get very good at doing, your site analysis and actually determining that it's a developable site. And you're not going to do that until you've got the strategy. So you need to start with your strategy, work, and at that point you're starting to put lots in the funnel, and then you get lots of opportunities to negotiate. So
sure. The other way is disc.
So
I'm trying to give you some leading questions here, Rob, for you to grab onto.
So he's talking about technical elements of that. So once you actually get the opportunity, there are a number of different personality profiling tools out there. So I use one called DISC, which and highly encourage you to go look that up. Which then, I guess, firstly it lets you understand how you are, how you come across to others. And it also gives you tools to actually be able to read others, to actually understand how they come across. So for me, I'm a very dominant personality. I make decisions very quickly. I'm very confident. And if I come across somebody who's, a little bit more detailed oriented, because I move so quick and because I can make decisions quite quickly, that can actually be quite intimidating for them, and they need time to analyse and process and that sort of thing. So when you can actually read their personality profile, understand how they actually assimilate information, then you can actually start to deliver that information in a way that is congruent with their learning style.
Yeah, correct. And we also learn about rapport building as well.
So rapport building, and I guess I touch on that in one of our modules in our property development formula program, which is all about a thing called match and mirror. So if you've got somebody else, that's opposite to you at the table, if you can match their looks, their movements, their gestures, their language, if you can do all of that, then there's a thing called pacing and leading. So firstly you pace them, so you match them all the way, and then when you do a leading gesture, if they follow, that means that they're actually in sync with you, and if they're actually in sync with you, they've actually got rapport with you. It's a very powerful sales technique. It's a very powerful negotiations technique. So anyone who's a salesman out there, you've probably done matching and mirroring subconsciously without even knowing it, and if you've done advanced sales training, you've probably been indoctrinated into that.
So perhaps for people out there, next time you're at a restaurant, there's an opportunity for you to, if there's someone just off on your periphery, to just follow what they're doing. So as they go for a sip of water or a sip of their drink, you want to do the same. If they cross their arms, you want to do the same. If they touch their face, you want to do the same. If they cross their legs, you want to do the same. And just see what happens. You start to do that for 5 or 10 minutes like he is right now. Right, it's beautiful. It's not very obvious at all. But just try that next time you go to a restaurant. Just do that for a few minutes and just see then after a while, someone will then start to actually match what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So then you get to the point where you're having detailed conversations. You also want to observe the environment that's sitting around you. So when you're walking into their home, have a look around. Is it clean? Is it tidy? Have they got pictures of their family on the wall? Have they got trophies of their sporting achievements? Have they got a picture of the giant fish that they caught? Yeah. All of those sorts of things where they are conversation starters, and when you actually have those conversations with the people, you can actually understand what their values are. And when you understand what their values are, then when you offer your solution, then you can offer it in a way that talks to their values. So, for example, if the guy has a picture of a fish on the wall, you can talk to him about his fishing, and then you can put it back to say, well, if we were able to give you this a little bit more for the property at the end of the process, because that's what's going to help you, if we're able to give you a little bit more, maybe you'd be able to upgrade that boat.
Correct.
Those sorts of things, and so you find ways of doing that. Or if you've got pictures of family on the wall, maybe it's how do you put your child through university? Those sorts of things.
Family vacation, those sorts of things.
All of that sort of thing. So some of those ups and downs is how do you actually you firstly got to get to the point where you've got those opportunities, and then secondly, you're going to crash and burn a lot when you're going in, because learning those things, I guess firstly you're going in with your heart pumping and that sort of thing. It's the first time you've gone in for a negotiation, and it can take quite a while for you to actually get comfortable with the fact that you're having a conversation and actually come across with confidence. And one of the key things in coming across with confidence, and a great thing that came out of the weekend is it's all about your physicality, so your posture. So getting upright and chest out and that sort of thing, you come across with a degree of confidence. And changing your physicality is also a great way of dealing with some of the issues and challenges you're going to have along the way. So if you're starting to feel down, you're going to be slumped-shouldered, but if you just physically change your physicality, that can change your mood instantaneously.
Correct, and also thinking about the outcome as well. So we were doing fire walking on Thursday night, and what they were encouraging a lot of people to do is to not think about the actual walking across the hot coals, but the euphoria that you'll feel at the end of it. And so the same could then be applied back into your negotiations with a vendor, is if you're getting your heart racing, getting a bit fearful of that, think about at the end of that, it takes you one step closer to where you want to get to, as opposed to, yes, you've got to have this conversation, but you need to build that muscle, but the end result is that it takes you closer to your property development goals.
Absolutely. And the key point, and the reason why we're pointing them out in these stages, guys, is that every single time you come to one of these stages, it's like Tony refers to it as a gate. So you're going to have failure after failure after failure until you learn how to smash through that gate and actually then get success, and then you move on to the next stage. And so it's really being able to cope with the ups and downs, and you're going to progress forward each stage. But it's not a matter of do one course and all of a sudden you're a developer. It's about practice and repetition and the like. So those sorts of things are actually going to get you over.
Well, it's creating the habits, right? And again, so we've talked about it. So motivation gets you started, but it's the habit that keeps you going. You've got to create the habit. So we've come away, again, I'm linking back to the 4 days we've spent, but we've had 4 amazing days, and what tends to happen at these sorts of events is tomorrow the phone will ring, there'll be a customer complaint, there'll be a missed opportunity, something will happen, life will get in the way, and people will start to unravel all the good things that they have learned over the last 4 days. So it's about creating the habit, a daily habit, to do this, to build the muscle. And no different than when you think back to our lives as property developers, doing something on a consistent basis to constantly build the muscle, as opposed to doing it once and then doing it again in a few weeks and a few weeks after that. Build the habit.
Absolutely. And if we then talk about our next stage, the next stage is, well, we actually have to go to contract, and in order to do that, are you deal ready? Now, last week I happened to do a live on being deal ready and some of the things that you need to do in regards to that. There's no point getting to the point where you've negotiated a fantastic deal only to then go, oh shit, I don't know what entity structure I'm going to do it in, and I don't have my legal contracts drawn up and all that sort of stuff, because you're going to go into the negotiation fearful of success because you're not prepared for success. So you want to make sure that you've actually dealt with that. But before you even go into the negotiation, make sure you've talked to your solicitor, make sure that you've talked to your accountant, make sure you've got all of those layers ready to go, so that if the person on the other side of the table happens to say, yes, I'd like to do that deal, then you've actually got a contract you can pull out, and you've got your special conditions ready to go, and you know what the terms are that you're going to actually do it under.
It's interesting, but I was having a chat to someone about this topic, and there's limiting beliefs here in regards to if you're not deal ready, then there's little things in your subconscious that are preventing you or potentially holding you back from actually going all out in getting that particular deal. So to your point, get rid of all the obstacles, tick all the boxes that you need to tick. So then there's only one thing that you need to do, and that's find that property.
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess next stage is actually acquiring it from a finance perspective. So, and again, that's deal ready side of things. Have you got all of those sorts of things in mind? Do you know, I guess, have you dealt with the three different stages of finance? You know, there's acquisition, there's the construction, and then there's the refinance of anything that you might be keeping at the end. Have you dealt with the three different elements of finance, and that is the equity in order to put your deposit down, the serviceability in order to actually borrow for, I guess, the loan, and then the liquidity, which is then, I guess, the cash to actually run the deal itself. So a number of elements that you need to deal with that in and around that as you go. Next stage.
Well, it's also from a potential money partners as well. JV partners and
yeah, money partners. So when you know where you're sitting in those positions, then the ups and downs you're going to have is just to actually try and find money partners if you've got a shortfall, and many of us do have shortfalls. So trying to have those conversations, it's not just call someone up and say, hey, can I have some money? Because generally that's not very successful from what I've seen. And it's not somebody turning up to one of our networking events and the one person that has money, 50 developers just jump on them like
seagulls on the chip.
Like seagulls on a chip. It's not. It's about people in your phone. So the people that are in your phone list, those people are the people that they like you, they know you, they trust you. They probably just don't know that you're doing property development. So it's getting out of your own way. It's being able to deal with the fear of actually going to talk to those people and say, hey, I'm doing property development. You've known me for a long time. You know what my integrity is like. I'm doing these courses. I've got this mentor. I've got this coach. They're fantastic, by the way. Would you be interested in coming into a deal like that with me if and when I find one? So you get ready for it so that when you're at that negotiation table, you know in your heart of hearts, you know it right here, that you can actually sign that contract with confidence. And if you know you can sign it with confidence, you're going to go into it with confidence.
Well, it's one of the human needs we learn about. Certainty. If you've got certainty, and you can go into that deal knowing full well that you're able to pay for it because you've had the conversations leading up to it. Now, with that being the case, also there are other occasions when you may find an amazing deal and you don't necessarily have a money partner. That's where you need to leverage the deal itself.
Absolutely. And so the deal provides an opportunity to get a money partner. The deal also provides an opportunity to potentially flick it for a finder's fee. So you should be able to go in with confidence knowing that you're negotiating on a deal, whether you've got the money or not, because you know that, well, if it truly is developable and if it truly is profitable, there's going to be someone out there that's willing to take that on, either from an investment point of view in investing in you, or alternatively from a flick it and get money from a finder's fee perspective. So you should know with confidence that you can make money out of that deal irrespective.
Absolutely.
Next stage then comes down to I guess the development side of things, and I guess the ups and downs you're going to have there are have I got the right consultant, and have I got the right person doing is it the right design, all of those sorts of things. And it really comes down to going right back to the very start of the process to say, well, what is my development strategy, and what is the council that I'm actually doing it in? Because that's going to inform a hell of a lot as to who your consultants are that you're actually dealing with. Because every single council has a different set of rules. So you might have the best town planner on earth, but if he doesn't deal with your council, then he's not very familiar with all of the issues and challenges that they have along the way, nor is he familiar with how often they push back on certain rules and those sorts of things. So and so we got some raving fans just over there having a wave at us. So hi guys. So knowing who that is, that's going to come down to your town planner, your civil engineer, your surveyors, all that sort of thing. You want locals in the area that specialise in your development strategy and specialise in the area, and architects as well. So what architects have done your particular strategy in your area, because those guys are going to know the builders when you get to construction phase and all that sort of thing. So, but it all starts with, have I got my strategy? And where a lot of people really, really struggle is that they try to put the team together before they know the area they're farming in, before they know their strategy, and they've got this hodgepodge of, well, they're a fantastic consultant and they're really excellent in their field, but they aren't really aligned with your strategy, and nor are they skilled up in the area that you need to be from a geography point of view.
So what you're saying, Rob, is that there is a process.
There is a process. There's a formula.
There's a formula.
There's a property development formula. And if anyone's interested in knowing that formula, just click in below, we'll have a chat with you. So there's absolutely a formula with regards to that, and the process is really laid out nice and clear that you start with that strategy in mind, because that forms the whole roadmap.
Yep.
And then from the construction point of view, that's then again going to come down to, have I got, do I understand the demographics of the area? Do I understand what people are actually looking for in the area? And that's because, are you an area expert? Well, how do you become an area expert if you don't even know what area you're going to be shopping in? Because the amount of effort that goes into becoming an area expert is actually insane. And if you're trying to do it across too many areas, you're just going to burn a lot of energy and get incredibly frustrated in the process.
Yeah, I'm going to say that there's also some downs. I'm going to stick my hand up and say they're happening to me at the moment with the civil construction side of things. So plenty of downs in the sense of things are happening the moment that you go into the ground. There's stuff that you're uncovering that you weren't aware of. You know, you think that you've got, dial before you dig is accurate, but in fact you're digging in areas and finding things which shouldn't have pipes but have got pipes, and so there's a lot of downs that are really challenging in that example as well.
It takes a lot of emotional fortitude to actually deal with those sorts of situations. Resilience. But that is exactly what contingency is for. And so if you understand that and you've built that contingency into your feasibility, then whilst it's not, ideal, it's actually factored into the budget. And so you can feel rest assured that, I guess, the issues that you're having coming up with are not eroding your profitability. What they're doing is eroding the cream. So if you have contingency there, the whole idea is have it there and manage the project like hell and try to never ever spend the contingency.
Yep.
But don't be too concerned if you do.
Correct.
Because you've not counted in your profit structure right up front. And if you are able to manage that project well, then you're going to have that as cream.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you're talking about construction of houses or construction of townhouses, and then you've got obviously selling it.
Absolutely. So from a selling it perspective, the issues and challenges you're going to have there may flow all the way back to the very, very start. And so having the end in mind should always lead into, the process up front. So firstly, are you going to exit the stock? That's probably one of the decisions you need to make right at the start.
Yep.
The second one is, have you got finance, and what are the conditions of finance? Because finance may say that you need pre-sales in order to do things. So if you need to have pre-sales, then you're dealing with that particular problem all the way at the front before the funding has even occurred.
Yep.
And so understanding that those problems are going to occur, you can anticipate them and have those pre-conversations with your finance broker right up front to say, well, what's going to happen here? Do I need to deal with that? You should also know what your break-even point is, so you know, well, if I'm trying to get the ball rolling, do I discount the first one off the plan to initiate some momentum? Do I do that with particular terms like pay the stamp duty or that sort of thing to get things moving? So for every problem that's out there and the ups and downs that you're going to face, there's equally a way to mitigate that problem. And what we're really trying to do is get you to think about these up front, identify them, and put a risk mitigation strategy in place. So you can never eliminate risk, it's impossible, but what you can do by mitigating it means that you're going to be emotionally going in with a level of confidence. Prepared, a level of confidence.
Yeah. But the point there is that there are solutions. There are solutions to all these problems. So you talk about the ups and the downs, and let's focus on the downs. There are solutions to those various downs, and it's whether or not you want to well, you need to work out where do you find those solutions and then activate on those particular solutions. So in regards to, like the market, for example, from a sales point of view, has been a little bit slow, particularly in southeast Queensland. It's sort of slowed up a little bit.
Well, it's been slow in a number of places. It started in Sydney and then it flowed on to Melbourne and Brisbane tends to come third. So, and with the slowing of the market, that's where being that area expert that we talked about before means, well, you know who the right agents are in the area, the people that you buy through and the people that you sell through. There might be completely different agents that you actually deal with in that process. So, being that area expert is key to know who are the people that you should actually be dealing with.
Yeah. Have we had any comments come through, Rob?
We haven't had any since Sean laughed about paying his kids, and I want to hear from the kiddies. So
I hope the kids have gone to bed, actually. I don't know how old they are, but it's what's the time, mate? It's 20 to 9, so perhaps it's time for bed. But yeah, any other questions or comments?
No, there's nothing sitting there. So now's the time, folks. There's always a small delay between you asking the question and us receiving it, so feel free to ask anything along the way with regards to that.
So once there's something coming through, is there anything else then with the ups and downs? So you've got to the sales side, is there anything else?
I think to round it out from a process point of view, that covers a very high level. But from a process point of view, what you want to be able to do is have some stress management techniques in place so that you know how to do that. So how do I, when some of these issues pop up, and it's inevitable that they pop up, it's going to happen. It's absolutely going to happen. So how do I actually deal with that? And I guess some of the techniques that came out of the weekend is change your state. So when you're not feeling good, when you're that sort of thing, so change your physicality. If I change my physicality, then I change my mood. So, do something radical to change your physical position, and also the language that you're using also feeds a lot into that.
Yeah, I would take it a step before that, and you touched on it, and that is that recognise that it's not always going to go to plan. It's not always going to go to script, and you need to be prepared for that. For when those moments come up. And so, as Rob said, what is it that you're going to do? But the first thing is that recognise it's just not going to go to script. And that's the life of a property developer, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So we are problem solvers, if nothing else. So Michael said, "G'day, gents. You both need some sleep."
Yes.
You have no idea.
You better believe it. I'm running on empty, well and truly running on empty at the moment. That we both are. It's been an amazing 4 days.
And I am literally running on empty. So
I'm actually out.
Yeah, so he's out.
So yes, we do need some sleep. But you're right. There's a massive mindset gain in regards to being successful in property development, because you are going to have a lot of ups and downs, and it's about understanding what do you want, why do you want it, the things that we constantly talk about. And again, it was refreshing or reinforcing for Tony Robbins to talk about it in his ultimate success formula. He starts off with, get clear on what it is that you want. And we talk about having the GPS analogy. That is, when you go to a new destination, you don't just type in the suburb and hope to arrive. You actually type in the address, the street number, street name, and the address. And guess what? You arrive. So why don't we do that with our own goals, with our own mind?
Yeah, so, and I guess the similarities between Tony's teachings, the other Tony, not this Tony.
The other Tony, that's how I refer to him. Yeah.
And our teachings are very similar, which is basically start with the end in mind, and when you know what the end in mind is, you then, I guess, have a look at your current position, and there's a gap in between them, and how do I plug the gap? How do I build that roadmap of success? I talk about building a 5-year property plan, in actually mapping out, what's deal number 1 going to look like, what's deal number 2, what's deal number 3, etc., in order to get that financial freedom. So I guess exactly the same processes, but I guess different languages and slightly subtle differentiations in technique.
Correct. The other thing that Tony Robbins then talks about is about taking action, right? And again, go back to the point that it's not going to go to script, but you need to constantly just take action towards your goal. You talk about just constantly doing, like one phone call or one little thing. It's like taking one step towards where you want to get to.
Every single day, one step every single day. Doesn't matter how big or how small. The more steps you can take a day, obviously the better, but even when you're feeling unmotivated, even when you're feeling like, you've had the worst day on earth, one single email, one single phone call, do something. and if you do something, then it's inevitable that you're actually going to get to your end destination.
Yeah, and that's where I disagree with Tony Robbins, because he talks about take massive action, and for some people, massive action could feel quite overwhelming, and so it's all about just taking action. Now, if you're up for taking massive action, that's awesome, and all power to you. But if you're not there, if you find it a bit overwhelming, just take action.
And I would add to that to say the whole reason why we get you guys to map out a 5-year roadmap, I guess in the psychology of property development, is so that you can see what the big roadmap is, but you can then break it down into bite-sized chunks so that you can actually deal with it exactly the same way that Tony just mentioned here, and you're only dealing with the little issue right in front of you, not the big one. And if you just keep dealing with a little issue and a little issue and a little issue, eventually it'll actually get there. So, but I guess there's a number of different metaphors. So how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Well, I learned a new one this weekend, which is complexity is the enemy of execution.
There you go. So simplified. Keep it nice and simple. Just break it down into little bite-sized chunks. Yes, have a plan, a longer-term plan, but then focus on what's the next thing that I need to do, what's that next task that I need to do in front of me. Yep. And then when you are taking action, the most important part then is to say, well, monitor the results of that action. So did it go to plan? Yes or no? If it went to plan, fantastic, reward yourself. If it didn't go to plan, then ask yourself, what's the lesson I can learn from that so that you don't make that mistake again? And then how quickly can I take corrective action and get it back on track as quick as humanly possible? Because things are going to go wrong, folks, but it's about your ability to actually react and deal with it. And for any of you who suffer from procrastination, then the longer you take to actually deal with a problem, the bigger that problem tends to actually get. Whereas if you can actually nip it in the bud right at the start and take corrective action, then you'll get there much quicker.
Yeah, and procrastination is linked to fear. So there's a fear. So the reason that your lawns are looking so manicured or your dishes are all done, but you're not doing the tasks that you need to, is because there's a fear in there. And so it comes down to understanding what is that? What's the reason that you're not taking the action?
Absolutely. And when we're talking about, I guess, responding very quickly to those, noticing and responding quickly, taking corrective action, if you're just 1 degree off, people going to the moon, if they were just 1 degree off, they would have missed it by thousands and thousands of miles by the time they actually got there, if they took a long time to do it, and the corrective action would have been massive. Whereas if they had have been monitoring it very early in the process, which fortunately they were, then they can take minor incremental changes and bring it back on track very, very fast. So the key to problem solving in your property development space is constantly knowing, what your expectation is, making sure that you're actually taking action towards that expectation, monitoring that the results you're actually getting are in alignment with that expectation, and if it's not, take corrective action.
Yep. Now we've got some comments come through, Rob.
So we have a couple. So
and we've also got more people watching.
We've got
the crowd's building. I mean, it's amazing.
We've got another physical live audience just on the other side of that camera. Another busload of people has just turned up. Michael says, "Go get some sleep." Yes, we've got that one. Margaret says, "Love the session. Thank you, guys. No worries." Michael again says, "I agree with you, Tony. Take action and measured actions with time lines keeps you accountable." Thank you. And Jim and Kathy have both come in late, so coming to the end of the session, folks. But plenty of gold if you just rewind just a little bit and go back to the start.
Rob, show the new people who've come in our live audience.
So we're physically sitting here in the hotel foyer of the Stanford Hotel in Sydney, and we've just had a busload of I'm going to say hosties turn up and
just to watch us.
Just to watch us.
Just to watch us.
Yeah. As you can tell by the fact that they're all looking at their phone and just tapping.
Well, they're watching us live. Yeah, that's it.
They are watching us live.
The comments will start to come through.
Yes. Well, as we haven't had any actual questions come through, folks, and we've been going on here for 50 odd minutes, I'm just going to give you last opportunity to ask your last questions. And while we're doing that, we'll just give you some logistics for some upcoming events. So next weekend we're back here. Well, I'm back here in Sydney for our regular monthly meetup here in Sydney. I'm trying to, for the life of me, after this many hours without sleep, I'm trying to remember who our presenters are. So I'm just going to pass on that one for now.
And the event's on.
The event is on, absolutely.
Same location.
2 o'clock at the Right Eastwards Links Club. And the next event in Melbourne is on the 5th of October, and in this particular instance it's going to be Tony running the show. I will not be there, dealing with my 18th birthday for my daughter. So
and then property development formula course kicks off.
Absolutely. The PDF program kicks off officially on the 11th, 12th and 13th of October. So it's not too late to join, folks. If anyone is actually interested, feel free to either reach out to either Tony or myself, comment on the links below, or call Shelley in the office, and we'd be more than happy to have a chat to you about that.
Yep, fantastic.
And as we can't see any other comments coming through, both Tony and I have A, had no sleep, and B, had no food.
Had no food.
And that combination is why my eyes look like this.
Correct. Correct.
And so we're going to bid you all farewell, folks.
Thank you.
Love yous all, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
See you guys.